The mining ship Horizon drifted slowly through the asteroid field. Its metal hull gleamed under the distant starlight as massive drilling arms carved into the rocky surface of asteroid designation Alpha 7. Inside the ship, 5 humans worked together on what should have been a routine mining operation. Commander Ji-won stood on the bridge watching the progress displays. She was a tall woman with short black hair and steady eyes that missed nothing. Her uniform bore the marks of someone who had spent years in deep space. She checked the mining progress one more time before walking to the communication station. Sora, how are our communication links with Earthbase? Quan asked. Sora looked up from her console. She was younger than the commander, with long hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panels as she ran. Diagnostics. All systems normal, Commander. We should be able to send our progress report in about 6 hours when we cleared the asteroid shadow, Sora replied down in the engineering section. Young-ho wiped sweat from his forehead as he adjusted the mining laser settings. It was a broad-shouldered man with calloused hands from years of working with machinery. The heat from the mining equipment made the engineering bay uncomfortably warm, but he continued his work without complaint. Minho, can you check the atmospheric readings in here? It feels hotter than usual, Young-ho called out. Dr. Minho appeared at the engineering bay entrance, carrying his medical scanner and a small toolkit. He was a thin man with gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. As the ship's medical officer, he also helped monitor life support systems, the temperatures within normal range, but I can adjust the cooling system if you need, Minho said, checking his readings. No need. Just wanted to make sure we were not overheating the equipment, Young-ho replied, turning back to his controls. The 5th crew member, Engineer Hajin, worked in the cargo bay, preparing storage containers for the valuable minerals they were extracting. He was quiet and focused, always making sure everything was properly organized. None of them noticed the dark shape moving silently through space toward their ship. The alien vessel was unlike anything humans had ever built. It had no sharp edges or visible engines. Instead, it flowed through space like liquid metal, changing shape as it moved. The ship was 3 times larger than the human mining vessel, but it made no sound and left no energy signature that human sensors could detect inside the alien ship. Dr. Kel Vorthok studied the readings on his console. He was tall and thin, even by the standards of his people. His pale skin seemed almost transparent, and his large eyes reflected the blue light from his instruments. His long fingers moved across controls that responded to his thoughts rather than his touch. Fascinating, he said to his assistant. The biological readings from that vessel show 5 specimens of the species we have been seeking. The assistant, whose name was Gorvak, leaned closer to examine the data. Like all Veltak, he had the same pale, elongated features as his superior. Are you certain these are the creatures from the planet they call Earth? Gorvak asked. Absolutely certain. The genetic markers match perfectly with our previous samples. These beings call themselves humans. Dr. Vortok replied. The Veltok had been traveling across the galaxy for centuries, studying different species and their ability to withstand pain and hardship. They had tested creatures from hundreds of worlds, always seeking to understand how different beings evolve to survive in harsh conditions. Their own planet was perfect. The temperature never changed. There were no storms, no dangerous animals, no diseases. The Veltok had evolved in paradise, and as a result, they were extremely sensitive to any kind of discomfort or pain. Even a small scratch could cause one of them to faint. Begin the capture sequence, Dr. Vorthok ordered. The alien ship moved closer to the human vessel. Strange blue beams emerged from hidden ports and surrounded the mining ship. The beams were invisible to human instruments, but they slowly began to take control of the ship's systems. On the bridge, Sora noticed something wrong first. Commander, I am getting some unusual readings. Our navigation system is acting strange, she reported. G1 moved quickly to look at the displays. The numbers were changing on their own, and the ship was beginning to turn away from the asteroid. Gyeon, are you making any changes to our position? Gyeon called through the intercom. Negative, Commander. All my systems show normal operation, came the reply. But even as Young Ho spoke, he could see that his controls were not responding properly. The mining lasers shut down by themselves, and the drilling arms began retracting without his commands. Dr. Minho felt it first. A strange tingling sensation spread through his body, starting from his feet and moving upward. He looked at his medical scanner and saw that it was detecting some kind of energy field surrounding the ship. Commander, we have a problem. There is an unknown energy field affecting our ship and possibly our bodies, Minho announced over the intercom. That G1 tried to activate the emergency systems, but nothing responded. The ship was no longer under their control. Everyone to the bridge immediately, she ordered. The crew gathered quickly. But before they could discuss what was happening, a bright light filled the entire ship. When the light faded, they found themselves standing in a completely different place. They were now inside a large white room with walls that seemed to glow with their own light. The floor was smooth and warm under their feet. There were no visible doors or windows, but they could sense that they were no longer on their own ship. Where are we? Sora whispered. Before anyone could answer, a section of the wall became transparent, revealing Dr. Vorthok and several other Veltok scientists watching them from the other side. Dr. Vorthok spoke, and somehow his words were translated into their language. Welcome, humans. I am Dr. Kale Vorthok, and you are now aboard our research vessel. Do not be afraid. We mean you no permanent harm. We are scientists, and we wish to study your species. Commander G1 stepped forward, her military training taking over despite the strange situation. By what right do you take us from our ship? We are peaceful miners, not soldiers. We demand that you return us immediately. Dr. Vorthok seemed amused by her words. Your demands are not relevant here. You are specimens now, nothing more. We have studied many species from across the galaxy, and all of them have taught us something valuable about pain tolerance and survival instincts. The alien scientists touched a control, and images appeared on the transparent wall. They showed various creatures from different worlds, all of them in some kind of testing apparatus. Each species has been most educational. Some could withstand extreme cold, others could survive without food for long periods. But our preliminary scans of your species show something very interesting indeed. Dr. Minho pushed his glasses up his nose and studied the alien carefully. What exactly do you think you will learn from us? He asked. Your species evolved on a world filled with dangers, did it not? Predators, diseases, natural disasters, wars among your own kind? We believe this has made you incredibly resilient compared to other species we have encountered. Dr. Vorthok paused and looked at each human in turn. We're going to test that theory very thoroughly. The next morning, if it could be called morning, in the windowless room, the humans woke to find food waiting for them. The meal was strange but edible, consisting of blocks that tasted like nothing they had ever experienced. The water was pure and clean, served in containers that seemed to be made from the same glowing material as the walls. Dr. Min Ho examined the food carefully before eating. As the medical officer, he was concerned about poison or drugs, but his scanner showed nothing harmful. It appears to be nutritionally complete, he told the others. Safe to eat, as far as I can determine. Commander Juwan ate slowly, her mind working on possible escape plans. She had been in difficult situations before, but never anything like this. The room had no visible exits, and the walls seemed to be made of some material that was harder than steel. Has anyone found any weakness in this room? She asked quietly. Young-ko had been examining the walls and floor with his engineering knowledge. He ran his hands along the surfaces, looking for any kind of opening or control panel. The construction is unlike anything I have seen. The walls appear to be grown rather than built. There are no seams, no joints, nothing that suggests how we might get out, he reported. SORA had been testing the range of her communication device, hoping to send a distress signal. But the device showed no signal at all, as if they were completely cut off from the outside universe. No communications possible. Whatever this place is made of, it blocks all signals, she said. Hajin remained quiet, but his eyes were constantly moving, studying every detail of their prison. He had always been the type to notice small things that others missed. Suddenly, a section of the wall became transparent again. Dr. Vorthok appeared on the other side, accompanied by several other Velthok scientists. They were carrying strange instruments that glowed with the same blue light as their ship. Good morning, humans. I trust you found the food acceptable. Today, we begin our first series of tests, Dr. Vorthok announced. The wall opened, and several Veldok entered the room. The humans immediately noticed how carefully the aliens moved, as if they were afraid of bumping into anything. Their movements were slow and deliberate, and they seemed to flinch at the slightest sound. Who will be first? Dr. Vorthok asked. I will, Commander Jiwon said, stepping forward. As the leader, she felt responsible for protecting her crew. Excellent. Please follow us. They led Jiwon through corridors that curved and twisted in ways that made no sense. The walls continued to glow with that soft light, and the floor felt warm and soft under her feet. Everything was designed for maximum comfort, she realized. They entered a large laboratory filled with equipment that hummed quietly. In the center was a chair that looked more like a medical examination table. Please, sit, Dr. Vorthok instructed. Jiwon sat down, and immediately soft restraints emerged from the chair to hold her in place. She tested them briefly, but found they were stronger than they looked. Do not be concerned. The restraints are merely for safety. We will begin with simple temperature variations, Dr. Vorthok explained. The first test was cold. The temperature in the room dropped rapidly until frost began to form on the equipment. Jiwon felt the cold, but showed no reaction beyond a slight shiver. She had been trained to endure harsh conditions, and this was nothing compared to some of the places she had served. Dr. Vorthok watched the readings on his instruments with growing excitement. Remarkable. The subject shows minimal stress response. Lower the temperature further. The cold increased until it reached levels that would kill most life forms. Kayan's breath became visible, and her skin turned pale, but she remained conscious and alert. One of the Velthic technicians monitoring the equipment suddenly collapsed. The cold that barely affected Jiwon had overwhelmed the alien completely. Get him to the medical bay immediately, Dr. Vorthok ordered, but his voice carried excitement rather than concern. Continued the test. Next came heat. A temperature rose until the air itself seemed to burn. Kwan felt uncomfortable, but adapted quickly. She had worked in hot environments before, and her body knew how to cope. The Velthic scientists had to retreat to an observation room behind protective barriers. Even with their environmental suits, they could not tolerate the heat that Jiwon was enduring. Incredible, Dr. Vorthok whispered. Her body temperature is regulating itself. She is actually adapting to the conditions. Okay? The tests continued for hours. Pressure changes that should have burst blood vessels barely affected. Cue and sound frequencies that made the Veltok cover their ears in pain were merely annoying to her. When they finally returned her to the holding room, Kata, the other humans, crowded around her. How was it? Dr. Minho asked, checking her pulse and looking for signs of injury. Unpleasant, but not unbearable, Jiwon replied. The interesting thing is how the aliens reacted. They seemed more affected by the tests than I was. The next day, they took Young Ho. The engineer was subjected to gravitational forces that should have crushed his bones. Instead, he gritted his teeth and endured. His body adapted to the increased gravity, and his muscles compensated for the extra weight. Dr. Vorthok watched in amazement as Young Ho not only survived, but actually began to function. Normally, under conditions that would have killed any Veltok instantly. "This is unprecedented," he told his assistant. "I know. The subject is not merely surviving, okay? He is adapting and continuing to function." When they tested Young Ho with extreme vibrations that should have shaken him apart, he simply braced himself and waited for it to end. One of the Velthik technicians, who got too close to the vibration source, fell unconscious from the mild effects. SORA was next. They subjected her to sonic frequencies that were designed to cause madness and panic. She covered her ears and found the sounds unpleasant, but her mind remained clear. She even tried to analyze the patterns in the sounds, her communication training helping her to process the information rather than be overwhelmed by it. The Velthik scientists who were monitoring the test had to leave the room. The sounds that Sora was tolerating were causing them severe headaches and disorientation. "How is this possible?" Dr. Vorthok demanded. These are torture methods that have broken every other species we have tested." Dr. Minho was subjected to various chemicals and drugs that should have caused extreme pain and hallucinations. His medical knowledge helped him understand what was happening to his body, okay? And he was able to maintain some control, even under the influence of the substances. The Veltak scientist who accidentally spilled a single drop of the chemical on his hand went into convulsions and had to be rushed to medical treatment. Even Quiet Hajin, when his turn came, endured electrical shocks that made his muscles contract and his nerves fired randomly. He bit his lip to keep from crying out, but he never lost consciousness or begged them to stop. Dr. Vorthok began to pace in his laboratory, his excitement growing with each test. "We must increase the intensity," he told his staff. "Humans are showing resistance levels far beyond anything we have encountered." But privately, he was beginning to have doubts. Each test that barely affected the humans was having serious effects on his own people. The Veltik were discovering that their subjects were not just tougher than expected, while they were tougher than the Veltik themselves. As the humans were returned to their cell each day, they began to share observations. "Did you notice how carefully they move?" Dr. Minho asked. "Yes," Jiwan replied. "And how they react to things that barely bother us. I think," Young Ho said slowly, "that we might be stronger than they are." None of them spoke the obvious conclusion aloud, but they were all beginning to understand that their captors might not be as powerful as they seemed. Dr. Vorthok stared at the test results for the 10th time that morning. The data made no sense according to everything his people knew about biology and pain tolerance. Every previous species they had studied followed predictable patterns. Apply enough stress and they would break. But these humans were different. "Increase the intensity of all tests by 50%, he ordered his assistant, Gorvak. Gorvak looked nervous. "Sir, are you certain? The current levels are already beyond what most species can survive." "These humans are not most species," Dr. Vorthok replied. "They require special attention." That day, they brought Commander Jiwan back to the laboratory. This time, the equipment looked different, larger, more threatening. Additional machines hummed with power that made the air itself feel heavy. "Today, we explored the true limits of human endurance," Dr. Vorthok announced. They strapped Jiwan into a new device that could apply multiple forms of stress at once. The temperature dropped to levels that would instantly freeze most liquids. At the same time, the gravity increased until she weighed 3 times her normal weight. Sound waves that could shatter glass filled the air around her. Jiwan closed her eyes and controlled her breathing. The The cold bit at her skin, the weight pressed down on her chest, and the sounds made her head pound. But she had been through worse during military training on hostile planets. She focused on staying calm and waiting for it to end. The Veltec scientists watched from behind multiple layers of protection. Even with their advanced suits and barriers, they could barely tolerate being in the same room as the test. Her vital signs are stable, Korvac reported in amazement. Heart rate elevated, but within acceptable ranges. Brain activity shows stress, but no signs of breakdown. Dr. Vorthok leaned forward, studying the readings. Impossible. Okay, at these levels, she should be unconscious or dead. But G1 was neither. When the test ended, after 2 hours, she was exhausted and shaking, but she looked directly at Dr. Vorthok through the observation window. "Is that the best you can do?" she asked. The alien scientist felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature in the room. The next day brought Youngho's turn with the enhanced equipment. The Tay subjected him to gravitational forces that should have crushed every bone in his body. The pressure was equivalent to being at the bottom of an ocean. On a high-gravity world, Young-Ho gripped the arms of the chair until his knuckles turned white. The weight was incredible, making every breath a struggle. But his engineering mind started analyzing the forces acting on his body, calculating how his bones and muscles were adapting to the stress. "Interesting design," he managed to say through gritted teeth. "The gravitational field is not perfectly uniform. There are weak spots in the coverage." Dr. Vorthok was speechless. The human was not only surviving impossible conditions, he was studying the equipment while enduring them. When they tested Sora with sonic weapons designed to destroy minds, she discovered something unexpected. The sounds, while painful, contained patterns. Her communication training allowed her to recognize that the seemingly random noise actually held information. These are not just torture devices, she realized. Okay, they are communication attempts, very crude ones. She began to respond to the patterns, creating her own sounds in reply. The Veltec technicians were shocked to see their subject trying to communicate through their own torture equipment. Dr. Minho faced the chemical tests with scientific curiosity rather than fear. When they injected him with compounds that should have caused unbearable agony, he observed the effects on his own body with professional interest. The molecular structure suggests a neurotoxin designed for silicon-based nervous systems, he said calmly while the poison coursed through his veins. Interesting that it has limited effect on carbon-based biology. The Velthac doctor who had prepared the injection looked at his own hands in horror. A tiny splash of the same chemical had landed on his glove, and even through the protective material, he could feel burning pain. Jin, when his turn came with the enhanced test, surprised everyone by falling asleep during a stress test that involved constant electric shocks. The current was meant to keep subjects awake and in agony, but Hajin's body simply adapted to it. "I have worked with electrical systems for 20 years, he explained when they woke him up. "You learn to live with small shocks. This is just a bigger version of the same thing." Dr. Vordak was becoming desperate. Nothing they tried seemed to break the humans. It's worse, his own staff was suffering more from the tests than the subjects were. During one session, disaster struck. A technician named Celtic was adjusting the equipment when he accidentally touched a control surface that had a small, rough edge. The tiny scratch, barely visible, sent him into shock. Kilthek collapsed, screaming in agony from what any human would consider a minor scrape. His pale skin turned even whiter, and he began to convulse. Other Veltec rushed to help him, but they moved so carefully, so slowly, that it took several minutes to get him to the medical bay. The humans watched this scene with growing understanding. "Did you see that?" Dr. Minho whispered to the others when they were returned to their cell. "A scratch smaller than a paper cut," and he collapsed. "I have been thinking about their behavior," Commander G1 said. "The way they move, the way they flinch at sounds, the way they react to temperature changes. They are fragile, Young Ho concluded. More fragile than we ever imagined possible, Svora nodded. Their ship, their equipment, everything is designed for perfect conditions. They have never experienced real hardship. While we, Dr. Minho added, evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Hajin, who rarely spoke, finally broke his silence. I have been watching their reactions during the tests. They are more afraid of the equipment than we are. The humans began to study their captors as carefully as the aliens were studying them. They noticed that the Veltec needed precise temperature control to function. They saw how the aliens moved slowly and carefully, avoiding any sudden motions that might cause injury. They observed how even minor changes in air pressure or sound levels caused the Veltec visible distress. They think they are the advanced species, Jiwan said quietly, but they have never been tested. They do not know what real strength is. Dr. Vorthok, unaware of the humans' growing understanding, made a decision that would change everything. Tamara, we begin the final phase of testing, he announced to his staff. We will push these humans to their absolute breaking point. I want to see them beg for mercy. But as he spoke, he did not notice the way his own staff looked at each other with fear. They had been running the tests, and they knew the truth that their leader was refusing to accept. The humans were not breaking. They were not even close to breaking. And meanwhile, the Veltec themselves were suffering more with each passing day. In their cell, the humans were making plans. Tomorrow, Commander Jiwan said, we find out just how fragile our captives really are. The reversal was about to begin. The morning of the final tests arrived with Dr. Vorthok, feeling confident that he would finally break the human subjects. He had designed new equipment that combined every form of stress they had tested, plus several new methods that no species had ever survived. Today, we discovered the true limits of human endurance, he announced to his staff. Prepare the ultimate testing chamber. The humans were brought to a laboratory 3 times larger than any they had seen before. Machines lined the walls, humming with dangerous energy. In the center stood a device that looked like a torture chamber from ancient times, but built with advanced alien technology. Sora will be our first subject for the final test, Dr. Vorthok declared as they prepared to strap Sora into the machine. She looked around the room carefully. Her communication training had taught her to notice details that others might miss. She saw that many of the control panels had warning symbols, and some of the machinery looked unstable. This equipment seems dangerous, she said to Dr. Vorthok. You sure it is safe to operate? Safe for you is not our concern, the alien scientist replied coldly. We are only interested in results. But Sora had not been asking out of fear for herself. She had been studying the room's layout and the placement of the equipment. She noticed that several machines were connected to the same power source, and that power source had a manual override switch located near the door. As they activated the testing equipment, Sora made her move. Instead of fighting against the restraints, she suddenly threw her full weight to one side. The chair, not designed for such violent movement, tipped over. The crash sent vibrations through the floor that the sensitive Velthic equipment could not handle. Alarms began sounding as systems overloaded. The power fluctuations caused several machines to spark and smoke. The Velthic scientists panicked immediately. The sounds of the alarms were too loud for their sensitive hearing. The smoke from the damaged equipment made them cough and gasp. Causing lights caused them to cover their eyes in pain. In the chaos, Sora rolled toward the emergency power switch. Still bound to the overturned chair, she used her feet to kick the switch to the off position. The room plunged into darkness except for dim emergency lighting. The temperature control system failed, and the room began to warm up to normal human comfort levels. But the Velthic This temperature change was like being thrown into a furnace. Emergency protocols, Dr. Vorthog gasped. But his staff were too busy trying to cope with the environmental changes to respond quickly. The other humans heard the commotion from their holding cell. Commander Juwan had been waiting for an opportunity like this. Now, she told the others. The humans had discovered that their cell door was controlled by the same power system that Sora had just disabled. With the power fluctuations, the locks failed. Young Ho used his engineering knowledge to force the door open completely. The corridor beyond was filled with confused Velthic technicians who were stumbling around in the dim emergency lighting. The environmental controls are failing, one alien was saying to another. We need to evacuate to the safe zones. But there was no time. The humans moved through the corridors with confidence, while the aliens struggled with the changed conditions. What seemed like minor inconveniences to the humans were serious problems for the VELTHAK. Dr. Minho found the medical bay and quickly studied the alien equipment there. His medical knowledge helped him understand that the Velthak life support systems were incredibly complex, designed to maintain perfect conditions at all times. If we adjust the atmospheric mixture by just 2%, he told Haji, it'll be uncomfortable for us, but nearly unbearable for them. Haji understood immediately. His quiet nature had allowed him to observe the aliens more carefully than anyone else. He knew exactly which systems to modify. Meanwhile, Young Ho had found the main engineering section. The alien technology was advanced, but the basic principles were the same as human systems. He began making adjustments that would gradually make the entire ship less comfortable for the Velthak. The gravity increased slightly. The humidity changed. The air pressure shifted just enough to cause the aliens to stress without seriously harming them. Commander Squan made her way to the bridge, where she found Dr. Vorthog trying to regain control of his ship. Alien scientist was clearly suffering from the environmental changes. His pale skin had developed a greenish tint, and he was having trouble breathing. Commander, he gasped when he saw her. Please, we can negotiate. Now you want to negotiate, Ji-Wan replied, to days of torture. She looked around the bridge at the other Velthak officers. Hey, they were all showing signs of severe distress, from conditions that the humans found merely warm and slightly humid. You studied our pain tolerance, Juwan continued, but you never studied your own. Dr. Vorthog tried to reach for an emergency communicator, but his hands were shaking too much to operate the delicate controls. The simple act of moving in the slightly increased gravity was exhausting him. Sora arrived on the bridge, having freed herself from the restraints. She had found the ship's communication system and was already working to contact other vessels and broadcasting a message to any ships in the area, she announced, both human and alien. Dr. Vorthog looked terrified. You cannot do that. The other species we have studied, if they learn what we have done, they will seek revenge. Then maybe you should not have been torturing innocent beings, Dr. Minho said as he joined them on the bridge. The humans had taken control of the ship without violence, simply by making the environment slightly less perfect than the Velthak required. What would have been normal working conditions for humans was causing the aliens to suffer more than the humans had during any of the torture sessions. Young Ho appeared with Haji, both of them carrying alien equipment they had removed from various systems. The ship is secure, Young Ho reported. All Velthic personnel are confined to their quarters, not by force, but because they cannot function in the current environmental conditions. Dr. Vorthog stared at the humans in amazement and horror. How is this possible? You are the primitive species. We are the advanced civilization. Commander G-1 knelt down so she was at eye level with the suffering alien scientist. You made a mistake, she said quietly. You assumed that advanced technology made you strong, okay? But strength comes from surviving hardship, not avoiding it. She gestured to her crew. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. Weather that could freeze or burn us. Predators that hunted us. Diseases that killed millions. Wars that lasted generations. Dr. Vorthok was listening intently, despite his discomfort. Every human carries the strength of billions of ancestors who faced pain and survived. You come from a world where nothing ever hurt you. That is not advancement. That is weakness. The alien scientist finally understood. His people had avoided hardship for so long that they had forgotten how to endure it. They had become fragile while believing themselves to be superior. "What will you do with us?" he asked. G1 stood up and looked out at the stars through the bridge windows. "That depends on what you choose to do next." Commander G1 stood on the bridge of the alien ship, looking down at Dr. Vorthok, who was still struggling with the changed environmental conditions. The other Velthok scientists had been moved to a special section of the ship where life support could maintain their preferred conditions, but Dr. Vorthok had requested to remain on the bridge. "I need to understand," the alien scientist said weakly. "How did we make such a fundamental error in our research?" Sora had established communication with both human and alien vessels in the area. Several ships were already heading toward their location, including human rescue vessels and Veltic diplomatic ships. "Before they arrive," Dr. Vorthok continued, "I must know the truth about your species." Commander G1 considered this request. She could have simply waited for rescue, but she realized this was an opportunity to prevent future incidents. "Very well," she said, "but you will record everything and broadcast it to your empire. Other species deserve to know what humans are really like." Dr. Vorthok nodded and activated his recording equipment with shaking hands. "Begin recording," G1 announced. "This is Commander G1 of the human mining vessel Horizon. I am speaking to the Velthic Empire and any other species who might be listening." She gestured to Dr. Vorthok. "Tell them what you thought you were studying, okay?" The alien scientist spoke into the recorder. "Okay, we believed humans were simply another species to be tested for pain tolerance and survival instincts. Okay, we thought our advanced technology made us superior to all other life forms. And what have you learned?" G1 asked. Dr. Vorthok looked around the bridge at the human crew. Young Ho was easily operating alien equipment that required delicate handling. Dr. Minho was monitoring life support systems while treating a Veltec technician who had fainted from mild dehydration. Sora was managing multiple communication channels. Simultaneously, Jean was quietly fixing equipment that the Veltec considered too dangerous to repair while operational. "I have learned that we were wrong about everything," Dr. Vorthok admitted. G1 walked to a control panel and adjusted the temperature by 1 degree. Dr. Vorthok immediately began sweating and showed signs of distress. This, a temperature change so small that most humans would not even notice it," she explained to the recording. "But it causes Dr. Vorthok's significant discomfort. It's fizzy," she then demonstrated by picking up a tool with a slightly rough handle. To her, it felt normal. When Dr. Vorthok tried to hold the same tool, the texture caused him to drop it and examine his hand for injury. "Humans evolved on a world that was trying to kill us," G1 continued. "Our planet had ice ages that lasted thousands of years, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, earthquakes that destroyed entire civilizations, diseases that killed half our population." Dr. Minho joined the demonstration. He picked up a medical scanner that had a small crack in its casing. Crack had sharp edges that would cut anyone who handled it carelessly. "This device is considered broken and dangerous by Veltec standards," Dr. Minho explained. "But humans deal with objects like this every day." He handled the scanner normally, the small, sharp edges causing no problems for his experienced hands. "We had predators that hunted us," Young Ho added, adjusting a power coupling that sparked slightly. "Animals with claws and teeth designed to kill. We learned to fight back or die." The sparks from the equipment made Dr. Vorthok flinch away, but Yunko continued working without concern. We had wars among our own species, Sora said, managing multiple communication frequencies that created overlapping noise, conflicts that lasted generations. We learned to endure suffering that would break other species. The overlapping sounds were giving Dr. Vorthok a headache, but Sora processed the information easily. Okay, and we had natural disasters, Hygiene said, quietly, working with electrical systems that carried enough current to stun a Veltic. Storms that could destroy cities. Floods that covered continents. We learned to survive when everything around us was falling apart. Dr. Vorthok watched in amazement as Hajin calmly worked with electricity that would have killed any Veltok who touched it. Okay. Every human alive today, Commander Juwan said to the recorder, carries the genetic memory of millions of ancestors who faced pain, suffering, and death, and survived. We do not endure pain because we are brave. We endure it because we have no choice. It is what we are. Okay. She turned to Dr. Vorthok. Your species evolved in paradise. Perfect temperature, perfect air, perfect everything. You never learned to suffer, so you never learned to be strong. Dr. Vorthok nodded slowly. We thought suffering was a flaw to be eliminated. We believed that a perfect environment created a perfect species, created a fragile species. Dr. Minho corrected gently. There is nothing wrong with avoiding pain when possible, but you must be able to endure it when necessary. The communication system chimed with an incoming message. Sora listened and then announced, the rescue ships have arrived. Both human and Veltak vessels are requesting permission to dock. Dr. Vorthok, Commander G1 said, what will you tell your people? The alien scientist was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke into the recorder again. I will tell them that we have discovered a species that we must never again consider capturing or testing. Humans are not subjects for experimentation. They are survivors who have been tested by their own world for millions of years. He paused and looked directly at the recording device. To any Veltak listening to this message, and to any other species who might encounter humans in the future, understand this. They are not primitive because they come from a dangerous world. They are strong because of it. Dr. Vorthok turned off the recorder and looked at Commander G1. What happens now? He asked. Now we go home, she replied. Huh? You return to your people with a new understanding. We return to ours with a story too. Tell will your people seek revenge against us? Dr. Vorthok asked fearfully. Commander G1 smiled for the first time since their capture. Humans are capable of great violence when threatened, she said. But we are also capable of mercy when our enemies admit their mistakes. The docking procedures began as both human and Veltic ships prepared to take their people home. Dr. Vorthok was helped to his feet by Dr. Minho, who checked to make sure the alien scientists could handle the transfer safely. As they prepared to leave the bridge, Dr. Vorthok spoke one last time. I have one final question, he said. If humans are so strong, why do you show mercy to those who are weaker? Commander G1 stopped and considered the question. Because, she said, true strength is not about how much pain you can cause. It is about how much pain you can prevent. The transfer proceeded smoothly. The humans were reunited with their own people, while the Veltak scientists returned to their empire with a completely changed understanding of the galaxy and their place in it. Within days, the recording of Dr. Vorthok's confession was being broadcast throughout Veltak space and beyond. Other species who had suffered under Veltak experimentation learned that there was a species the aliens feared to test. The message was clear. Humans were not to be underestimated, captured, or tortured. They were survivors, forged by pain and strengthened by hardship. And perhaps, most importantly, They chose to use their strength to protect rather than to harm. The galaxy had learned a new respect for the species from the dangerous little planet called Earth.